The Missing Children Incident. Chapter 8. Music Box. Fuck, grumbled Barney when he realized that Ben was still missing. Where the heck could that little brat be? He was always so quiet, like a mouse, and now he sneaked away just like a mouse. And what if he escaped somehow? This thought flinched his stomach, although he knew that escape was not possible. But he checked the doors on the corridor, just in case, and he felt a rising anger. Such a little bastard. He wants to ruin all his fun. The door was locked. He pushed the handle, checked the keys in his pocket. Everything was just as should be, so he went back to the room and called for Ben with an over-enthusiastic voice. "Where are you, little boy? Stop hiding from good old Barney." His voice sounded playful and nice, although he didn't really feel so playful and nice at the moment. He was a bit tired, and being uncertain about the kids' whereabouts made him nervous. He walked by the wardrobes next to the wall and he hit all of them with his fist. "If I have to search for you, it would be worse for you, so be a good little boy and come forward." There was no answer. Of course, Barney checked under the birthday table, although he didn't believe that Ben was hiding near to his friend's bloody corpse. But there were many other furniture and video console next to the wall. The little brat was probably there. Barney walked there, ripped open the wardrobes and he shook the ones that were locked. He also kicked into the consoles, so forcefully that they hit the wall and then tilted back to their place. If that bastard is hiding behind them, he will regret it, because these consoles weighed like 100 kilograms. Even if he was not there, hearing those dumping noise they made by hitting the wall would cause him great fear. This thought cheered up Barney a little bit, helped him to forget about tiredness. He made some pause while hitting and kicking the furniture, to be able to hear if his victim made some noise. And he had luck. He heard some very quiet noises under the furniture in the corner, which were covered with a fabric. Barney jumped there, ripped off the cover and bent down. There was the last child, cowering in the furthest corner of the desk he was hiding under, holding the crappy marionette in his arms which was supposed to be in the puppet show. Scott made Barney to lock this puppet away, and he slightly remembered that he hid it in another room, but he didn't really care. In another time, it would probably bother him how that thing got here, but not now. He was focusing on Ben now. Barney crouched. Make sure to cover the escape route with his body to prevent the little boy to break out. "Come here. It's time to finish the party." He said this with a smile which even he felt was not really convincing. "Come, and you will have your birthday gift." He held his hand out, which still had blood dried on it. He was thinking about how he will kill Ben. He wanted to choke him too, like his sister, to compare the experience, but the muscles in his arms started to ache by now. "You killed them," said Ben. His voice was calm, almost creepily calm. Tears were flowing on his face. His eyes were red. His face was pale, but there was no fear in his voice. It sounded more sad than scared. "You are the dark man I had nightmares about. You are evil, very evil." "Come on," said Barney, still with that silky voice. "Let that crappy old puppet go and come here. You'll see that I'm not that bad." Looked like Ben wasn't listening at all. He hugged the marionette and retracted in the darkest corner. Barney tried to catch him, but he didn't reach him even with his arm fully stretched, and hearing that oddly calm voice, he didn't feel the mood to crawl after him. "I know that you are evil," Ben continued. "She told me that." "Who are you talking about?" Barney started to be very nervous. Did this kid talk to somebody? But who? There was nobody else beside them, wasn't it? He suddenly felt really silly, crouching back on the room. "She wanted to save us. She tried. She told me to hide. And she showed me where. She didn't want me to see the things you were doing. But I heard everything." His voice choked, but the next time he talked again, his voice was calm again. "She sees your thoughts. She didn't want to, but she needed to look into them to save Jenny. She is very sad that she didn't succeed. She—" "Who the fuck are you talking about?" Barney was yelling. Ben's words made him feel something that was inconveniently close to fear, and he didn't like it. "For God's sake, this kid is just playing with him. He wants to make him angry, and hell knows that he succeeded." The man squeezed his head and shoulder under the desk and grabbed Ben's arm. He tried to touzle him out. The marionette fell out from the boy's arms, but he didn't give up easily. Ben's tearful eyes were suddenly filled with hate, and he snapped to Barney's eyes. Barney stretched his head and hit it to the bottom of the desk. While the tiny nails were scratching his face, he involuntarily recoiled from the sudden pain, and Ben snatched at the chance and broke out. Being smaller, more agile and desperate, he clearly slinked past Barney, making him lose his balance and upsetting him while he was moving back. Ben was at the other side of the room while Barney was getting on his feet, but he didn't run to the corridor. He stopped next to the desk where Betty's body was lying. He looked at his sister with silent mourn, then looked at Finn and Joey who were lying on the floor. He didn't run away even when Barney approached him with rage on his face. He just stood next to the desk. His eyes looked like they were filled with horrible wisdom. "Oh, you will regret this, I'm sure." Barney groaned like a beast. He felt really humiliated. It was ridiculous how Ben escaped him, and he was sure that boy is secretly laughing at him. He found the hammer on the floor and, without losing the sight of Ben, grabbed it. But the blood made the grip slippery, or was the kid's staring eyes confused him? Anyway, the hammer slipped from his hand and fell. It sounded awkwardly loud as it hit the floor, because the kid made no noise. Only the man's angry huffing were audible on the silence. Barney started to feel like an idiot, and it didn't make him happier. He didn't grab the hammer again. He decided that he will squeeze the breath out of this little fucker with his bare hands. No matter how hard his arms were aching, he need to prevent any awkward situations the little bastard is planning. He leaned on the desk, pretending he was very exhausting, and snarled at Ben. "And could you tell me where your little friend is hiding?" "You can't hurt her," said Ben. "That look, again." "Ha, you think so? You haven't seen what I'm capable to do, because you were hiding, right? You didn't even try to help them." Barney listened with joy as guilt faded Ben's face. "I was hiding, but she says I couldn't save them." A single tear left his eye. He suddenly turned his face to the ceiling as if he was listening to an invisible speaker. "I know, but still." Barney also looked up. In that very unlikely case if someone would be there, and then looked again at Ben. This boy starts to be really weird. Is she still talking to you? But where is she? Don't even search for her. You couldn't hurt her anyway. She is dead for months now." A terrible smile appeared on his face. "It was you who killed her." With a sudden move, Barney crossed the desk and grabbed the boy. He was led by both anger and fear. "Ben is talking nonsense. How the hell is it possible that he knew about that murder months before? The little girl in the parking. Maybe he was playing there and saw it." It could be, since Barney saw his sister, Betty, the first time right after the killing. Maybe this little bastard was also around. This is just another reason for killing him. Such a little weasel. It's a real luck that he wasn't talking about it to anyone. Ben cried as the man's touch broke some kind of spell. The creepy calm left his eyes and terror replaced it. He was twitching like an eel, and when Barney tried to grab his throat, he suddenly snapped his head and his tiny teeth sunk into Barney's right hand. He bit two of his fingers and the pain was sudden and sharp. Barney shouted and tried to free his fingers from Ben's mouth, but the boy didn't let them go and his bite turned into more and more painful. Barney was filled with terror. What if Ben bit his fingers off? And not just because of the fact of mutilation. It would be such a revenge from the kids. If Ben succeeds, Barney will surely be shaded with suspicion. With an injury like this, he will not be able to hide the evidences. And what will the day shift think if they find him bloodied, with missing fingers? This thought put him off his shock, which was caused by the sudden attack of the brat, so he clenched his fist and hit his face hard. It made the boy's head flinch, so his grasp eased, but not enough. Barney hit him again, harder, and he felt the skull cracking under his fingers. Ben finally opened his mouth and screamed. "Scream, you little shit," groaned Barney, his voice filled with evil victory. He raised his leg and kicked the boy on his chest, and he collapsed to the floor. Barney looked around wildly, and he noticed the toolbox. He grabbed the wrench and stepped back to Ben, who tried to get on his feet. Still dizzy, the man trampled on his small chest and kept him down on the floor. "You plan to uncover me, you useless little brat?" He struck with the wrench. He aimed for his mouth, and in a huge splatter of blood, a handful of little teeth fell to the ground. Barney laughed. "Let's try to bite anyone, bastard." Ben screamed with an utterly sharp voice, raised his arm to cover his face. His voice hurt Barney's ears, but fortunately the second blow, which broke the boy's arm and tore up his face, made him silent. He lied on the floor, with bulging open eyes, a horribly disfigured mouth, tried to breathe to ease his pain with another scream. But he couldn't from the shock. Barney was fed up with him. This brat drove him mad. He almost didn't feel any joy from hurting him, and this made him disappointed. He stroked it some more times, to end this struggle and to finally start the unpleasant work of cleaning up. The next seemed lethal. Ben was still and silent, but Barney hit him a few more, just to be sure he is dead. After it ended, he brought his body back to the desk, sat him on one of the chairs, just to be easy to reach him later. After him, he brought Jenny in, and then the others. He left Betty for last. He lifted the fragile little creature from the desk, and looked at her fondly. "Your brother was a sly little rat, But this doesn't make me love you less." He smiled at the dead girl and sat her on the chair. All the children were sitting on their chairs now, bloodied. Their limbs were hanging lifeless. The man stood at the upper end of the table, looking through his work with pride. It was such a wonderful day, except that little affair with Ben. He prepared all the sacks and cleaning supply which he brought here days earlier. He washed his hands at the old bank in the corner. The water which came out was brown because nobody used it in the last years, but it didn't bother him. But it surely did that his bitten fingers were aching and made the process painful. He cursed Ben and wished he could kill him again. He cleaned himself roughly. He will have time for a more complex cleaning at the end. He took on some gloves, to not leave any other fingerprints around. Then he walked out and called the animatronics inside. They couldn't enter the storage room because of some safety code in their programming, but it was also easier that they were standing in the door. He also led Foxy there from the room he was locked up with his old settings. While he was dealing with Foxy, he heard some loud static noise, moving like a spider. The mangle slipped out of the door. Seemed like it was locked away here during the party, along with its other foxmate. Barney was pondering if he could lock it back, but then he decided he will not. It's better if nobody else walks in here, to let it out. And he is responsible for the robots. He was sad that he let it out to make it return to its place, but the mangle didn't seem like it wanted to move. It just stood there on its multiple disfigured limbs. Relays were clicking inside of it while it was staring at Barney with its two eyes on its two heads. Even if it sounds crazy, but it was staring at the bloodstains on Barney's clothes. It made him think of something that someone told him about the new animatronics earlier, but he couldn't recall it. Anything it was, it made him feel uneasy. The mangle made another static noise and crawled away like an insect, rushing towards Kids Grove. Barney shrugged his shoulders. He has important matters to deal with. Later he will find out what was that thing with those toy animatronics. He returned to the kids around the desk, took his axe, the sacks and some tape, and started vanishing the bodies. He found a place for them, a place where nobody would search for any dead bodies. She saw everything. She was observing the whole thing, and even by knowing that nothing can harm her, watching those brutal scenes made her so horrified if the killer could grab her in any moment and kill her too. She saw everything. Although she wished that she didn't. She could have left, but she forced herself to stay. She didn't want to give up hope. She believed so desperately for the last moment that she can change things, that she can save those children. But she couldn't, because she was dead for months now. She didn't really remember her death, and she was glad for that. She only remembered the face of the man who killed her. She also remembered what happened before, the yelling with Bella over some stickers. How silly it seemed right now. Patty, that was her name. She didn't forget it. She also remembered where she lived with her mother, who was always surrounded by faint sadness like she was surrounded by light fog. She had never seen her again. Her mother didn't visit this place, and she couldn't leave to visit her. Her spirit was bound to this place. She couldn't walk out of the restaurant. Well, not like she could walk, more like floating or jumping here or there like lightning, invisible to everyone. She had no idea, How much time passed when she woke up? Neither what happened with her dead body. When she woke up, it was midnight on a really dark night. She couldn't move and saw the world from an odd angle. Her last memories from before were the horrible burn pain in her lungs and the choking terror. And now she is all alone in a dark place, unable to move. She thought she was drugged and held in captive. She lied there until the morning, and by accident she discovered she can move again, but not in her body but as a ghost. She realized she was dead and she saw that she is in a storage room, among a lot of broken robots and puppets. The thought didn't frighten her anymore. It was more terrible to think that she was still alive but kidnapped by the evil man. On one of the walls hung a slim marionette, and she knew somehow that it was the body she was in all night. It was a bit weird, though. She found out that she could float around, observing people without being noticed, and by night, she was trapped again in the puppet's body. It took a few days to find out how she can move the marionette's limbs and move around in it, using its strings. She could also float, almost as a ghost. She saw her old friends a lot, Bella and the others. It made her sad how much they didn't care about her disappearance. She tried to catch their attention, first hoping that the power of friendship will win, but later, when she saw they replaced her by another girl, she tried to scare them. But the best she could achieve was throwing a glass of cola on Bella's dress, and probably it wasn't even her doing. But she saw something else, something worse too. She saw the evil man who killed her, working as an employee at Fazbear's. No matter, she was a ghost. She didn't dare to approach him, only looking at him from the darkest corners, watching how nicely he acted with the customers and how he stared at the children when nobody else was around. She didn't understand why they didn't uncover him. Didn't they feel the darkness in him? Patty did see that darkness. He was all covered into it like he was covered by dark purple mist, fading the bright lights coming from the others. How is it possible that nobody senses it? She had a chance on the birthday party to uncover this monster. When the marionette was taken out of the storage, she didn't left it, but gathered all her forces to make it move. First, the puppet was inflexible, and she could use this for her advantage, because she was taken to the manager of the restaurant. Patty tried to move the hanging, skinny limbs, and she felt it worked, but nobody noticed it, and if they did, they thought it was a coincidence. Instead of investigating the marionette, the manager handed it over to the evil man. Patty completely forgot it from fear how she could left that body. She only recalled it when she was plunged into the storage again. She saw a desk, decorated for a party among the broken, dirty furniture, and she had a really bad feeling about it. She floated after the bad man and felt his evil is much stronger, much darker than before. The purple mist around him turned into black and red lights flickered into it. When she found him, he was putting on the yellow rabbit suit, then walked into the main hall, took a birthday cake from a table and waggled to one of the desks like a funny animatronics he pretended to be. Patty looked frozen, as the children next to the table followed him, laughing, and he led them into the darkness. When the children was sleeping because of the poisoned drink, she left with them and tried to wake them up, but she failed. Then the bad man returned, took off the rabbit suit, and started to do some horrible things with the kids. But midnight was approaching and Patty felt her power growing. She sensed that the youngest boy, who was not much older than her, has a sensible mind and he was able to hear her. She talked to him and helped him to hide, and decided that if there is only one kid she can save, that it will be this boy, Ben. That was his name. But first she tried to save the blonde girl, who ran away from the bad man. No matter how much disgusted she was, she peeked into the slimy darkness which was the evil man's mind, and found a memory which, she hoped, will frighten this monster enough to let the kids go. But she failed again. The bad man was frightened, but this made him more evil, and hurt the blonde girl much more. They all died, and she couldn't save them. Not even Ben. The boy acted really brave, but the bad man was bigger and stronger. Patty looked away when Ben died. When she was listening to his screams, she thought, at least he tried. He bit you, you bastard, and it will uncover you. But the nightmare hadn't ended yet. The evil man dragged the little bodies to the table, took an axe and separated their limbs. He put the body parts into bags, and closed them with lots of tape. Patty forced herself to watch it. Maybe one day she will have a chance to uncover the bad man, but until then she will need to know about all of his evil deeds. The packs of dead children were on the desk in a pretty pile. When he was done, the bad man wiped his forehead, then took the packs, one by one, and brought them to the door. And there, oh, such a horror! Patty couldn't believe her eyes. The mascots of the restaurant, the animatronics, were standing in the door. The bad man walked to them, opened their bellies and slipped the packs into them, among the wires, one pack into each animatronics. After the children's bodies were hidden into the 4 animatronics, he sent them away. He took the last pack, brought it to another storage room, where under the broken craps lied a yellow bear suit, long forgotten. The bad man removed its head and put the last child's body into the suit. After that he returned to the room to clean up the mess. Sometimes he lamented over his bitten hand, and this made Patty a little bit glad. But this slight glimpse of happiness was nothing compared to the pity she felt for the murdered children, and she was fed up watching the doings of the bad man. She wanted to leave the room when midnight arrived, and she found herself inside the puppet which was lying under a table, close to the evil man. She felt terrified and helpless, but she found a way to sneak out. The marionette had a strange style in moving, stretched, wobbling steps it made, but it was also completely silent. She looked after the animatronics. They were roaming like they always were at night. There were no sign of self-consciousness. But Patty knew that the time will come. She was sure that those children will join her. She floated to the prize corner where an old music box was placed, and started a simple, relaxing melody. She would like that if her new friends will awake they will not be that frightened. Listening to that music, she curled into an empty gift box, whispering, "Don't be afraid. You are not alone. I'm here, and I'll be waiting for you." Her voice glided through the corridors like the breath of autumn. It took hours for Barney to clean the place and hiding the bodies. It was a tiring and disappointing job, but it had to be done carefully. His victims need to be chopped. At least their limbs need to be chopped to fit the place he found for them. That place was inside the animatronics, between the wires and wasn't a lot of space. Later he hid the pieces into plastic bags and tightly closed them with tape. It made them more fitting into the small place and prevent any odor to slip out. Sadly, he had to dismember Betty too. Even he found a special place for her, inside the yellow bear suit, which had much less wires inside, but it still was too tight, so he had to chop the little girl too. He tried not to look at her. He didn't want to see the angelic little creature as she was reduced into disgusting raw meat. He almost wept that he had to do such barbarity, but he overcame it. Think of her as she will be inside of the suit. You don't have to see that she is actually rotting in pieces. You will remember as you last saw her, with closed eyes, sweet terror on her face. It made him a bit more cheerful thinking that Betty will wear the yellow bear suit just like he was wearing the yellow bunny. He thought about this always when he was too tired of cleaning or hit his bitten fingers into something which made him start cursing. After he cleaned himself in the end, washing away all the blood, and took a closer look at his injuries which been caused, all his cheerful thoughts were gone. There was a scratch on his face which didn't really hurt, but it was clearly visible, and his two bitten fingers. They had ugly wounds on them and they hurt like hell. Even if he bandaged them, they will still be very noticeable. With luck he was done with all the cleaning before the day shift has arrived, and he didn't forget to get some souvenirs too, to make it easier to remember this awesome day. A little bit after midnight a strange thing happened. The music box in the prize corner started to play a melody. He checked it, but of course there were nobody else. Only the marionette was sitting in the corner. Didn't I see it in the storage? He stopped the music, but it started again. He let it play then, since it made it easier to clean up. Then with the deafening silence. When Mark, the day guard, arrived, Barney was sitting in the office which was reserved for the security guards. "Is there any news about the missing children?" That was Mark's first question, and he clearly looked worried. Nothing. Do you think if they would have been here if we hadn't found them yesterday?" "Oh, of course." "And did Scott call you?" "No. I'm sure he is biting his nails at home from worry. Listen, I'll leave if it is not a problem. I had a hard night. I felt so bad for those poor kids, and it didn't help that the air is hot like hell here." "Yeah, I see you look really worn out. This fan is good for nothing, just stirring the hot air." He laughed, but it sounded a bit stiff. "Let me accompany you to the exit." Barney didn't want to refuse it, but he was fed up with this overzealous young guard already. He took his bag, which would make any cop who could peek into it push him behind the bars, and followed Mark to the exit. "What the heck is this?" The boy suddenly stopped. In front of the door, all the shiny new toy animatronics were gathered. There was Toy Chica, Bonnie and Freddie, and also the balloon boy, and next to them cowered, with her metallic body rolled up, the Mangle. They sat there like a group of scared children. They were staring at the two men with their round eyes. Actually, as Barney grudgingly identified, they were all staring at him. The Mangle made her creepy static noise, then silenced, and they were just staring. "What's wrong with them?" said Mark nervously. "They look like as they want to prevent us to leave." "Not you. Just me. Barney thought. He didn't want to show that he was nervous too, but he found it as a good chance to explain his injuries, which Mark seemed hadn't noticed so far. "These new bots are a bit sensible," he said, and raised his wounded hand. "At night I was tinkering with the mangle to distract my thought about the yesterday fuss, but I could barely concentrate on this bitch made an advance and cut my fingers. I was angry, and hit it with my fist, which made one of her scrappy piece to jump out and scratch my face. The bitch then run away and probably somehow communicated with the others. I guess these silly little bots all think now that I'm here to hurt their friend or something." "Yeah, it could be," Mark nodded, and now looked less afraid of the toy animatronics. "They also have an automatic face recognition system and a built-in line to the police, so why couldn't their AI cause such things?" This idea made Barney startled. Face recognition system and police line. That was why he couldn't remember last night. Good thing that only the mangle could see him covered with blood, because her parts don't function well. But if someone took a look at her memory, or she sent the data to another toy bot, and this other one will send it to the police. He need to do something. Fortunately all the little bastards are here. "Why don't they leave?" asked Mark. "I don't know," Barney answered. "Let me take a look at their memory. Be careful. They might attack you." Mark was worried again, but Barney didn't care. He put the bag with the bloodied clothes on the floor and leaned over the nearest robot. "Toychika?" It was her. Nothing happened. The animatronic let him open her head. Barney put it into her head. He was seeing the mangle's head several times, and it looked the same. He touched some circuits which he never touched before and hoped it will erase all the memories about him which would make him look suspicious. After he finished it, the toy animatronics winked, looked at them with her blank look, and walked away. That happened with the others too, even with the mangle. Finally he stood up and said goodbye to Mark. "They will be fine now, I guess, but I'll bug off now. I'm about to collapse right here and now." "Keep up the good work." "Thanks, and have a good rest." Mark waved him goodbye, but Barney wasn't listening anymore. He was thinking about where to get rid of the incriminating evidence, and from where he will get a new purple suit. And after all that, he will be finally home. He had already imagined stretched on his bed, and playing the whole night over again in his mind. He dipped into his pocket and stroked the 5 little locks of hair. Yes, he couldn't wait.